Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan. Welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera, where today I'm going to be sharing with you a really interesting camera, the 1959 Yashica 35 rangefinder camera. What makes the Yashica 35 so interesting is that it was the first 35mm rangefinder camera which was completely designed, engineered, and produced in-house by the Yashica company. When the Yashica 35 entered production, Yashica had already been selling a couple of other 35mm rangefinder cameras, but these were actually made by the Nikka camera company, which Yashica had acquired a couple of years before. So they were basically Nikka cameras which had the Yashica name placed on them. Yashica decided that there was a good future for 35mm photography, and using their resources and the resources which they acquired from Nikka, they decided to, from the ground up, design and build their own camera, and the Yashica 35 was the result of this project. As you can tell by looking at the Yashica 35, it strongly resembles the old Contax II series. In Japan in the 1950s, Leica and Contax were considered the top camera companies in the world and the best made cameras in the world. But very few Japanese in those days could afford a real Leica or a real Contax. So domestic makers decided to produce cameras which had the same outline or design. And it was quite a good idea because a lot of Japanese buyers really, they scooped them up. The Yashica 35 was quite a good seller. The Yashica 35 was a surprisingly well-made and sturdy camera for its day. There were many manufacturers of cameras in Japan, 35mm cameras at the time, but a few were actually very, very good. The Konica cameras were very, very good, the Canon cameras were very, very good, and so were the Yashica cameras. Other cameras were good. For example, the Fuji or Fujica cameras, they were good cameras, and then there were cameras which were not so good. Cameras like the Petri, where they cut a lot of corners in the materials and workmanship, and to be able to sell cameras for a much lower price. The Yashica 35 is made from really good materials, and a lot of them. The top and bottom covers are made of brass and very thick. It's very hard to dent a Yashica 35 camera. The chrome plating is very thick and durable. They don't corrode easily, and unlike other cameras like say Petris or Fujicas, you can't rub off the chrome with just a little bit of chrome polish and a piece of cloth. It's really strong and durable. The rest of the camera is also very well made, made of solid zinc, aluminum, brass, and quality steel. These are very reliable cameras, and it's very rare that I find one which I can't fix or repair. Usually all they require is a little bit of cleaning up to get them into good working condition, whereas other cameras can take a lot of work just to get them working in a mediocre way. So these are really good and well-made cameras. Let's go ahead and take a look at the controls and functions of the Yashica 35. Starting at the top left here by the finger where I'm pointing, we have the window which shows the film speed. To adjust the film speed for the film you have loaded in the camera, you lift up the film rewind knob and you turn the dial underneath until the film speed lines up in the window. Now, this window is just a reminder of the film speed you have loaded in the camera. It doesn't matter. If you forget to set this, it's not going to make any difference in how the camera works. I sometimes sell these cameras to people, and they are worried that because they put the wrong number in the window that the photos won't turn out right. The window is just a reminder. It doesn't have any effect on how the camera functions. So long as you remember what film you have loaded in the camera and you make the adjustments on your light meter or smartphone app, light meter app, you won't have any problems. So don't worry about it. And we have here the film rewind knob with a lever which pops out, which allows you to rewind it more easily. We have a shoe for the flash gun. When you mount a flash gun, this one can use bulbs or a strobe flash. When you are using the flash gun, you have to set the flash to sync speed, which is about 1/30th of a second on the Yashica 35. And you have to use a PC sync cable, which you attach to this socket here. Next to the flash shoe, we have the film counter window. And then we have the shutter button, which has a hole and threads to accept a standard cable release. And then we have the film winding and shutter charging knob. The top is quite basic. Moving to the front of the camera, we have the viewfinder and rangefinder windows. The Yashica 35 has a very large and bright viewfinder, but it does not have parallax correction. It has bright lines which allow you to compose easily, but the frame lines don't move or adjust for parallax. There are extra indicators which you use when you're focusing on something very close up and or at infinity, and in between. Normally, as long as you have your subject within the frame lines, it's going to come out on the film. The rest of the controls, the important controls, are on the lens itself, like most other mechanical rangefinder cameras. First, you have the focusing ring, which is closest to the camera, and there's a convenient focusing tab. The lens helicoids on the Yashica 35s are quite sturdy, and they can be a little bit more difficult to turn than other cameras, but they are more precise. So it's like they don't have as much play as they put in later cameras. So these are a little bit stiffer than what you'll find in, say, a Contax or later Yashica cameras, which are much easier to turn. On the top of the focusing ring, we have a depth of field scale, which allows you to see what the depth of field is for the aperture you select. Just in front of that, we have the aperture ring itself with the numbers engraved on the top. And in front of that, we have the shutter speed ring. And the shutter has speeds ranging from 1 second to 1/500th of a second, plus the X-sync speed of 1/30th of a second. There were two lenses available with the Yashica 35. Both were 45mm lenses, but one was the f2.8 lens and another was an f1.9 lens, which was an extra cost option on the Yashica 35s. Both lenses are excellent performers. The f2.8 lens is superior in one way, in that the glass in the rear elements is made better. The f1.9 lenses sometimes suffer from haze problems. And the haze is maybe 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 of the f1.9 cameras I come across have haze in the rear elements. In most cases, it cannot be removed. If the haze is light, it really doesn't have much of an effect on the photos, so you don't really have to worry about it. Just make sure that you keep it clean. The Yashica is a user-friendly enough of a camera that if you want to clean the lens elements, you can just simply unscrew the front of the lens, and if you set the shutter speed to bulb and set it to the widest aperture setting, you can easily clean the lens just by holding open the shutter and cleaning it with a cotton swab and lens cleaning fluid. And also, if there's any haze, you can try removing it this way. Don't use abrasives to try to remove haze unless you know what you're doing. And also, if you have an old Yashica 35 where the shutter is stuck, since you can remove the front lens quite easily, if it's stuck, just take it off, put a couple of drops or 1 drop of lighter fluid, and cycle the shutter, and that'll usually free it back up. And you can start using the camera again. They're quite simple and easy to work on. Put that back on there. Getting to the bottom of the camera, we have a standard 1/4 inch tripod socket, and here we have the release switch. Instead of a button like other cameras, the Yashica uses a switch. This was made because some people were worried about putting your camera in the bag and accidentally depressing the button and maybe losing 1 or 2 exposures of film. With this kind of switch that solved that kind of problem. There's an A setting where you put it which you set it to when you have film loaded in the camera and are firing the camera. When you want to rewind the film, switch it until it points to the R, and then you can rewind the film. And that's about it. The cameras are quite, as I said, very simple. They fit well on the hand. All the controls are easy to reach. Everything is nice and smooth. They're really wonderful cameras to shoot. And if you're looking for a really good camera with a great lens, which is very reliable and one which you don't have to worry about losing if you're on a trip or something like that, because you can usually replace it quite inexpensively, the Yashica 35 is a good camera. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions or comments about the Yashica 35, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you're interested in buying a vintage Japanese camera, I sell these at my Etsy and eBay stores. Please check the description below the video for links to my stores. If you want to see more videos about film cameras, please subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.